Haman Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Haman.
Hello there, and welcome to Haman Nature. I am Adam Haman, and with me, as always, my good buddy Tyrone. How you doing, man?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I'm feeling very patriotic today, Adam.
Wow, you really are. I am both. My stomach churned a little bit when you did that, but also I felt a little proud. I have mixed feelings about this subject.
Yeah, well, I was reading another one of your great articles titled "Some Criticism and Some Redemption for the U.S. Flag." With the subheading, also, would foreign flag waving lunatics please stop destroying stuff in my country, please? And I was reading this, and I really had some emotional reactions along the line of the article, and I think it was just was going to be a good discussion. So I kind of wanted to you to share that to all of our YouTube subscribers.
All right. Well, I'm very pleased to talk about this subject. I like this article too. And if it's not too hammy, I thought I would just read it. And then we can talk about some of the spots where you've got stuff you want to talk about.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here's my article about the U.S. flag and how I feel about it and other pieces of cloth. For much of my early life, I've been lukewarm about the American flag. Part of it has to do with the kinds of people I ran into as a kid who displayed the flag proudly and ostentatiously. Back then, where I lived anyway, these were the types of people who wanted to make darn sure that you knew that they loved that flag, and they were going to look at you a little sideways if you didn't show as much reverence as they did. And I have also long resented how cynical politicians wrap their warmongering schemes in that flag, telling everybody that if you don't support all manner of military interventionism and empire building, that you, quote, hate the flags or something. It's also pretty awful when military recruiters use the flag to sucker young men into enlisting to defend America and then get shipped to the Middle East to suffer horrors doing darn near the opposite of defending America. Patriotism, wielded as a grifting cudgel, is a reprehensible thing. I also resented, as you just did, Tyrone, being forced to stand up as a kid, face the American flag, put my hand over my heart, and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. In school, they made us recite those words at an age when we didn't even know what the word allegiance meant. I find that kind of brainwashing creepy, and I resent it. And perhaps unfairly, I carry some of that resentment over to the American flag itself.
Yeah, Adam, I kind of want to ask you your very first line in that article. I find interesting, and just curious if you're willing to share a personal part about yourself. Why do you say for much of your early life you've always been lukewarm about the American flag? I guess I had the opposite growing up, right? I always felt like standing up in class and saying the Pledge of Allegiance and America, rah rah. I had the opposite of you. So I'm curious, how did you have that? We're so indoctrinated by it. Like, how did you avoid that?
Well, I came out of the womb an individualist, I guess.
Okay.
I just found there's something creepy and brainwashy about it.
Even
Like
at a young age.
Even at a young age, sitting there with 20 or 30 other kids around me, all turned in our, standing up next to our desk, turned towards the corner of the room with the flag in it, all with our hands on our heart, all talking in that unison thing.
Right.
It just strikes me as creepy as all hell. And I was a little too young to have a natural love for my country. That came later, right? I mean, I do love American culture and values and the things that are true about the people who live on the middle third of North America, largely, that unite them, cultural values. I love that. But as a young kid with my hand over my heart, I didn't have any appreciation of that. I was just a kid, but I knew right away that this was I guess I was probably reading science fiction by then, or, and that just has a creepy, brainwashy, science fiction-y dystopia feeling about it. What are you doing to these kids? Making them say words they don't understand these words. You're just, you're sort of
Right.
pre-programming them. I found it creepy then.
Hmm. Okay. Ah, interesting, man. Uh, let's continue on with your article here.
All right. So, backing up a hair, I find that kind of brainwashing creepy and I resent it. And perhaps unfairly, I carry some of that resentment over to the American flag itself. But none of that means I like the flag of any other country better than ours, that's for damn sure. Which brings me to the events of yesterday. And folks, I wrote this late July 2024. Benjamin Netanyahu spoke before the U.S. Congress yesterday. I'm extremely annoyed about that and all the money taxpayers are forced to give to Israel. But I'm even more annoyed by all the protesters in Washington, D.C., who were really disrespecting the U.S. flag I just spent several minutes disparaging. At one point, pro Hamas scumbags took down an American flag from a flagpole at Union Station and replaced it with a Palestinian one. Worse, they burned the American flag that they just took down. I also wasn't a big fan of all the Israeli flags I saw being waved around either. It didn't help that a lot of this flag waving and protest came along with some very anti American jackals defacing iconic American symbols like the Freedom Bell and a bunch of statues.
So I'd also like to direct folks to this article because again, you've got this thing packed with links, and especially that one link about the Freedom Bell video. It, man, I had the exact same reaction that you had, but I think we'll talk about that when we get to the end of the article. Some follow up there, but I find it hilarious to watch these videos. So take away the terrible things that had happened there. Just look at some of the graffiti that are put on that they put on it, right? Like I think one said Hamas is coming for you, and then there was the hammer and sickle logo next to like the anarchist logo. It's like none of this stuff goes together,
No.
guys. Like I don't know what your worldview is, but if you think Islamic extremism in the form of Hamas plus anarchy plus Soviet style socialism can all go together. I don't know what you're hoping is what your worldview looks like in your head. I'd like to take a visit there one day, but
Yeah, these wannabe revolutionaries, they're not Thomas Jefferson. Heck, they're not even Robespierre. These are idiots,
oh, they're just
destructive idiots. And
right.
oh boy, just seeing those pictures and watching that video just pissed me off to no end. So yeah, let me continue.
Yeah.
Um, this doesn't really make me sympathetic to your cause, people. Take your stupid flags out of here and go home. Quit destroying stuff. Where the hell are the police? Is this really the type of thing we allow anymore? Have we sunk so low? Again, this is in broad daylight. I mean, the cops were there. They were just
Right.
allowing this crap to happen. I'm not reading anymore, ladies and gentlemen, but it just boggles my brain that people are just allowed to do this, and ostensibly the authorities are there doing absolutely nothing or very, very little. Certainly not enough, not up to their capability.
Well, I just said I was going to say this for last, but actually, I think let's jump into it now because we've hit the emotional point of your article here, and you can tell we're both getting a little emotional, and that is the thing that I struggle with so much, and I think it's one of those things like if you lose your faith in religion or something you've grown up with your whole life, it's hard to give it up, and when you do, you don't feel good about it. You
Yeah.
feel sad and dejected about it, and later in life you'll still miss it because there's something that when you experience as a youngster it stays with you forever. You just can't shake it. And so for me, becoming an ANCAP, so to speak, means I have to give up the idea of my beloved country and my beloved flag, and that's a hard thing to give up. That sense of patriotism, that feeling of belonging to something bigger than yourself. So when I see an American flag burning in one context, I'm saying to myself, yeah, that's right, because that represents the government. The government is doing evil things. Part of me wants to tear it down. And yet when I see people like this doing the exact same act pisses me off. And I can't figure, like, that internal conflict, that internal struggle. I know it's just something I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life. And I think it's really can be really confusing for people in our position, libertarians, so to speak. How do you deal with that kind of conflict?
Well, I can try and boil it down into a bumper sticker slogan. Um, I'm not proud to be a United States citizen, but I am proud to be an American.
Mm,
The culture and the values, they aren't tied up in Washington, D.C.
right.
and the monopolistic government that I really, really resent. And when people are destroying the American flag and replacing it with their own, it's not like they're flying the gold and the black
Mm,
anarcho-capitalist
right.
flag. They're flying freaking some Palestinian flag or
Right.
Israeli flag. Well, I sure as heck like the stars and stripes better than your ridiculous nation state flag symbol.
Right. It's not like they want to get rid of the nation state. They just want
No,
to replace it with a different one.
or make me
Like,
worship a different one. Yeah, no thanks.
like you think that's any better? I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah, exactly. All right, back to the article. I am really tired of people in America waving flags from places that are not America and destroying property that does not belong to them. Speaking of foreign flags and expensive destruction, I am disgustingly reminded of the time that Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi proudly displayed a signed Ukrainian flag in the U.S. Congress as that grifting weasel Volodymyr Zelensky gave a speech. I think the translation was, quote, "Thanks for all the U.S. taxpayer money, suckers," unquote. So our politicians give our money away while stoking the kind of murderous anger that causes lunatics to come over here and destroy American flags and statues and take what should be a beautiful public space and turn it into a place for violent mayhem. And again, where are the cops? Is this legal now? Or perhaps the cops are on strike? No, they aren't. And you will quickly find that out if you take to the streets and try to do anything to stop these jackals from destroying public property. The cops will show up then and arrest you. This is anarcho-tyranny, lawlessness against your interests, but the full weight of the law if you try to stand up against it.
A couple of points there, Adam. First of all, I cannot believe you said the name of the he who shall not be named.
Speaking of he who shall
All
not
right,
be
that's a
named,
little dumb joke.
I assume you're talking about Zelensky?
Yeah. Every time I hear his first name, all I can think of is Harry
Oh,
Potter.
Harry Potter. I'm
Because
more annoyed
the
by
name
his
sounds so similar to me. I mean,
I'm more annoyed by his last name. Does it have one Y at the end or two or is it
oh,
three?
yeah,
Your
yeah.
name is stupid, and I'm sad that I'm forced to know it as we give you billions of dollars.
Yeah, but I mean, the key point there is the law is what's enforced,
Yep.
right? That's it. It doesn't matter what's on the books. It matters, how they actually
Yeah.
respond to it.
The
So
speed limit isn't what's posted on the sign, not really. It's what is being enforced that day by these cops that are on
yeah.
that highway.
So yeah, if you think the cops are there to protect your property, I lived in downtown Minneapolis during the Summer of Love. So believe me, cops weren't there to protect your property, anybody's property. So
Yeah, well, we're about to get that in this little piece of mine. But before we do, since we mentioned Ukraine and Zelensky, I just started to read Scott Horton's new book about that conflict and the decades of American and NATO provocation that led to it.
let's
It's
give a
called
little,
Provoked.
yeah, let's give a little plug for that.
It's in my bedroom, or I'd hold up my copy. But we'll put a link in the show notes here to that book. I strongly encourage you read this. It is a hammer. It is a cudgel. You cannot, whatever opinion you have, if it's fed by the mainstream military and the neocons, it will be smashed to pieces with facts as you go
Good.
through this book.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
So to backtrack a little bit, this is anarcho-tyranny, lawlessness against your interests, but the full weight of the law if you try to stand up against it. We saw this a lot during the Summer of Love and all those BLM riots. The rioters can do whatever they like to you and your property. Fight back, though, and here come the cops. So America is definitely kind of sick now, and there's an argument to be made that we have it coming. Our government has gone overseas and caused all manner of death, destruction, and mayhem over the years. A goodly amount of all this foreign flag waving hatred is a response to that. And of course, our government is still at it. It is a vile, corrupt, bloated leviathan. But still, I am an American, and I'm sick to death of people waving foreign flags or wearing lapel pins of foreign flags while they're destroying or looting in America. For all my reservations and complaints, I love the American flag far more than any other. I hope you all do too. That was my rant.
You know, that last part there, that's another one of these internal conflicts that I'm constantly having to battle myself with. And that is, do we have it coming?
Mm,
You know, I don't like seeing all of this illegal immigration that's been just pouring into the country over the last several years. And sometimes I get upset about it when I see, certain things happening, and don't need to go into some of that stuff. But then I say to myself, well, if we hadn't spent the last 50 years tearing up all these Central American countries and meddling where we don't belong, and the drug war and the nonstop intervention and the coups that we do, and the destruction of the economies that we are indirectly, if not directly, responsible for. I'm like, well, I mean, can't really blame them. At this point, it's like, yeah, maybe we should take them in, because I don't know, we kind of screwed up their situation in the first place, or had a hand in it. So man, I struggle with that, and I think that's why people just, they can't handle the internal conflict, so they need to
yeah.
boil it down to something very simple: good versus evil. America good, Russia bad, or immigration good, immigration bad, right? It's like they, in a way, no, neither side is right and neither side is wrong. And there's, when you and that's hard for a human being, I think, to accept, that there's just no real answer here. I don't know, man. Do you
Yeah.
struggle with that at all?
Um, Not so much. It is comforting to view all this mayhem as just a conflict between civilizations or cultures, and one is good and advanced, and the other is evil or barbaric, and therefore I don't need to worry about what evils were perpetrated by quote my side, because I'm on the right side of history or culture or religion. Um, I don't think that's correct. I think that morality is universal, and the evil actions perpetrated by our military are evil. It doesn't matter if the country we're invading is more barbaric than we are. You don't have a right to invade anybody else's property. But as far as whether the populace of a country with an evil government has it coming, I don't believe in collective punishment.
Hmm.
And I did not support any of this militarism. I voted against it every time when anybody asked me for my stupid opinion, which they very rarely do. Um, I'd probably feel a little more guilty if I was an enthusiastic supporter of all these wars, but I am not. I never was. And even if you were a supporter, I think you can take a lot of comfort in the fact that you've been brainwashed and hoodwinked by your government and your politicians and the mainstream media to think stupidly that this is a clash of civilizations, and it doesn't matter if we do something stupid and barbaric and prop up puppet dictators when it benefits our entrenched interest, and topple regimes when it doesn't, stoking all kinds of hatred and fear and resentment for billions of people. You got propagandized into supporting that, and it's never, like any good religion will tell you, it's never too late to come to Jesus and have an epiphany and decide that you don't want to be evil anymore. And yeah, take responsibility for your own individual thoughts and feelings, and first, your own soul first, to use a word I don't literally believe in. But yeah, you don't have to be thinking of yourself as a subject of a government first. You're first an individual with your own set of values, and honor those in a consistent way. And I think you'll a lot of these concerns, Tyrone, will slough off.
So I think that's an important concept to discuss a little further, this idea of collective punishment. And I'm going to take this into a very weird direction, but I think sometimes you need to do the absurd to see the normal sometimes, or the flaws in the normal. Collective punishment, yeah, that is a tough one for people to wrap their head around, because they will say things like, well, World War II, we needed to drop a couple of atomic bombs on Japan to win that war, to get them stopped. Now, forget all the arguments of whether that really needed to happen or not, or military or whatever. Let's suppose it was. Um, you know, we're are we saying that all Japanese people are morally responsible for whatever action any Japanese person takes whatsoever anywhere in the world? Because that's essentially what you're saying by this collective punishment. You're saying, well, suppose suppose one Japanese person murders some guy in Peru. Can we throw every Japanese person in jail? You would obviously say no, because the punishment should only go to the criminal. Okay. But then when it comes to war, people can't extrapolate that same theory. So they can't separate, for whatever reason, the military or the government from the farmer. So when we bomb the hell out of, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, instantly annihilating children, well, apparently they had it coming. So I think as libertarians, we hold individual rights. That's our sort of our beginning premise. And so for us, crime and punishment justice is about reparation to the individual who was harmed, the individual victim, and the punishment goes to the person that caused that harm. But now here's where we're going to get weird. I don't think you would disagree with anything I just said. Do you?
Um, no, I was gonna take it a little further. I definitely think that collective punishment is wrong, and if you find yourself in a position of dropping an atomic bomb on a city filled with obvious innocents, including little children, and killing them all, there's no sense in a world in which you could actually say that they had it coming. That is never going to be right. I was just going to add a little nuance and say I can easily construct a thought experiment by which, in order to protect myself, I might feel like, and literally protect myself, not extract justice on somebody who
Mm-hmm.
had been attacking me and now is gone. But
Sure.
like if I was in the middle of literally defending my life, I can construct a situation where I might kill an innocent or two in in order to save my life. But even if in such a weird and horrible and awful hypothetical, I wouldn't think that the innocent had it coming.
Mm-hmm.
I might think, well, I was in a tough spot and
Mm-hmm.
I did a bad thing and I killed collateral damage, but I wouldn't just shrug it off like, well, they were in the way or
Right.
what. We tie ourselves up into mental gymnastics to make ourselves not feel the pain for doing bad things, and it doesn't work.
Right.
And it because you will feel bad,
Mm-hmm.
and it does you no good to lie to yourself. You can only get through these things by being honest. But
Yeah.
I cut you off with that little addition. So where were you going?
All right. I'm reminded of a great book by the amazing Robert Heinlein called
Hmm.
Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
You may recall a series of terrible and awful movies made with a similar name.
there was
They
more than
claim
one.
it's related. I don't know.
There was more than one.
Yeah, many more.
Oh
They did
my.
terrible, terrible, awful, low budget sequels to the first one, which wasn't good in the first place. So I don't know. But in that book, um, actually, a better example. No, it is that one. Sometimes I get that one and Ender's Game mixed up a little bit, but or maybe it is Ender's Game that kind of has a similar twist. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Imagine an alien species is going to invade Earth, right? And now we're at war with the alien species. And we're getting desperate. We're losing the war, but the scientists come up with a secret weapon to blow up their entire planet and win and end the war. Well, we've now just killed a bunch of children, Adam. Defend yourself. Or
Yeah, I don't
maybe
know if
you
that.
maybe you would say we shouldn't do that. So
I don't know if that was.
obviously I'm making this correlation to the atomic bomb thing that we just talked about, right?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a plot point in Starship Troopers, but it for sure is in Ender's Game.
Right, yeah.
And in the end of that book, and in a couple of sequels that Orson Scott Card wrote, Ender deals with this guilt for the whole rest of his life. He literally killed an entire species, except I think for one queen he found somehow later. Anyway, doesn't matter. Well, it's like I was alluding to earlier. I can't imagine a situation where I might commit that sort of murder of innocence if I felt like there was literally no other option to defend my life.
Right.
I also can imagine not being willing to make that decision under certain circumstances. Maybe I'm old. Maybe I'm sick. Maybe I think, defending my life isn't the ultimate aim that I want to pursue. All I would say is that whichever way, if I was the person making that decision, whichever way I went, I would never talk myself into thinking that killing innocents is some sort of a moral virtue or even neutral. It's not neutral. You might be forced into doing horrible things in this messy thing called life, and values and morals and principles are ultimate goods to aim towards. You're not likely to be able to succeed 100% on all these endeavors because life is so messy and horrible things do come up. But just because that is the truth doesn't mean you should act like there's no guiding star, guiding principle to guide you. Then you're just lost. You're not even trying to behave in a way that makes life better for you and others. So don't get confused just because sometimes there's no perfect answer.
Yeah.
And think about it. The more nasty and horrible and awful the action you're contemplating, because you think it's necessary, the harder and deeper you should think about whether you're right and whether there isn't another option. For example, dropping those nukes on Tokyo, the Japanese mainland. I think it's fairly acknowledged at this point that was more of a show of force to intimidate the Soviet Union than it was
over. Yeah, Japan had already lost.
Yeah, they clearly had lost. But I mean, that's not what people, except high-ranking generals at the time, they said that. But a lot of politicians said opposite.
Certainly not what you're taught in school when you're pledging allegiance to the flag.
God, I hate that. Isn't that so creepy? You tell the truth now. The first time they had you do that, did you know what that word allegiance meant?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know. It's so young, right? You start doing it in first grade or whatever. It's like I can't remember, but yeah, you grow up with it, and you're like, well, this must be right because that's what children think. Your parents or some authority tells you something. Right. Okay, great. I'll do that. So for me, I'm a bit more perhaps a moral subjectivist than you are, and maybe we'll do another episode on that another time. It doesn't matter for what I'm about to say because I think you would agree with this, but for me, one of my personal moral code says that in an emergency situation, the moral thing to do is end the emergency. So maybe aliens invade and we've tried everything we can, peace negotiations, but they are just whoever they are, their power structures hell-bent on destroying us, and our only option is to destroy their planet. Well, okay, that ends the emergency, and that was the moral thing to do at that time. But once the emergency is over, you go back to a normal, I'll call it normal set of morality, right? And so this is where I think a lot of people get something like the Israel-Hamas thing completely wrong. So there are a lot of the pro-Israeli side, perhaps, or take any conflict you will, right? When the attack happened on October 7th, they were morally justified to do whatever it took at that time, in that instant, in that moment, to end the emergency, the invasion. Once that stopped, you got to stop and go back to normal morality. You can't just start bombing the hell out of everybody that's left, because the emergency is over. Okay, now we go back to trying to find and punish the actual instigators, the actual criminals, and not an entire population. That's all I'll say on that. We know it's a complicated topic. You got any final thoughts on something like what I just said?
I don't think you're wrong, except perhaps in incompleteness, because we would need another 50,000 hours to start disentangling that whole mess.
Who started what, when, where, why,
But
who,
yeah,
whatever.
as a general principle, lifeboat scenarios are different than how we construct laws and rules and norms and mores in normal life. I'll break into the cabin if I'm freezing and lost into the woods, but I doesn't mean I don't think that it's wrong to break into people's cabins. And similarly, yeah, once the initial event is over, if you're going to, murder a bunch of innocent people in an attempt to get justice, quote unquote, you're probably doing something wrong. And you probably tried to talk yourself into it with something that's very labyrinthian and complicated and probably a lie.
And this is why giving emergency powers to governments especially is especially dangerous.
Good point. And also, when you give them such powers, they will define what an emergency is. And they'll find a lot of them, I bet, because it's fun to exercise emergency power.
The emergency never ends.
Right. Like climate change.
We still got to go through TSA because the emergency hasn't ended, apparently.
That one thing happened one time, and I got to take my shoes off every time I board a plane from now until eternity. That's kind of dumb.
I do splurge for the TSA pre-check, so I don't have to do that. But oh, great! They'll probably revoke it now that I said that.
Yeah, you've gotten on another list, Tyrone.
Oh God, no!
All right. Well, I think we've covered flags and flagism enough. Any parting words for the good folks?
Nope. Thank you for tuning in to Haman Nature, everybody. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, we definitely do, Porcupine and I. And if you want to read more articles like this, go to hamannature.substack.com. That's HAMAN, nature.substack.com. There's all sorts of stuff there. And if you appreciate what Tyrone and I do, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. And you will also get access to bonus episodes and portions of interviews that we've done and a lot of other stuff. Thank you very much for listening and watching to Haman Nature.